Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human warship Use Retribution. Through the thick glass windows she watched the battle raging in space. Human ships fought side by side with alien vessels against a common enemy. The aliens were called the Corvani, and they looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. Their ships were sleek and silver, very different from the rough metal boxes that humans built. Elena smiled as she watched a Corvani ship save a human cruiser from enemy fire. The two species had been fighting together for 3 years now. It was hard to believe that just 15 years ago, humans had never seen an alien before. Now they shared technology, traded goods, and even taught each other's children, the enemy they fought together was terrible. The Zirathi were like giant insects that wanted to eat everything in the galaxy. They had no interest in talking or making peace. They only wanted to destroy and consume. When they first appeared 5 years ago, both humans and Corvani knew they had to work together or die alone. "Commander, we're getting a message from Admiral Chun," said Lieutenant Torres from his station. Elena nodded. Admiral Marcus Chun was the best military leader humanity had ever produced. He was smart, brave, and most importantly, he understood how to work with the Corvani. His alien partner was War Speaker Theshkar, a tall Corvani with dark green scales and sharp yellow eyes. Together, they had won every major battle against the Zirathi. "Put him through," Elena said. Admiral Chun's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Elena could see the busy bridge of his flagship, the UES Independence. Human and Corvani officers worked together at different stations, sharing information and coordinating attacks. "Elena, the situation is getting bad," Chun said. His voice was calm, but Elena could see worry in his eyes. "The Zirathi are throwing everything they have at Haven's Gate. If we lose that world, we lose our main shipyard and 200 million people." Haven's Gate was one of humanity's most important colonies. It was where they built their biggest and best warships. More importantly, it was home to millions of families. Elena had visited there many times. She remembered children playing in the parks while their parents worked in the massive factories that never stopped building ships. "What do you need from us, sir?" Elena asked. "I need every ship we have," Chun replied. "The Corvani are sending their entire Third Fleet to help. War Speaker Theshkar says this is the battle that will decide the war. If we can break the Zirathi here, they won't have enough ships left to threaten anyone." Elena felt her heart beat faster. This was it. This was the moment they had all been preparing for. "We'll be there, Admiral. The Retribution and her battle group are ready." "Good. Remember, Elena, we trust our Corvani allies completely in this fight. They know our battle plans, our ship positions, everything. That's how we've won so many battles together. Trust is what makes us strong." The connection ended, and Elena immediately began giving orders. All around her, human officers started preparing for the most important battle of their lives. They checked weapons, reviewed battle plans, and made sure every system was working perfectly. 2 days later, Elena found herself in the Haven's Gate system watching the largest space battle in human history. Thousands of ships filled the darkness. Around the planet, human vessels looked like flying cities made of metal and armor. Corvani ships moved like deadly silver fish through space, and coming toward them was a black cloud of Zirathi ships that seemed to go on forever. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," came the voice over the communication system. "Today we fight. Not just for Haven's Gate, but for the future of both our species. Remember, the Corvani are our brothers and sisters in this fight. Trust them as you trust each other." The battle began with long-range weapons fire. Bright beams of energy crossed the space between the fleets like deadly rainbows. Human missiles and Corvani plasma bolts struck Zirathi ships, causing them to explode in balls of fire. But there were so many enemy ships that for every one they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Elena watched from her position in the second battle line as Admiral Chain led the main attack. His ship was surrounded by both human and Corvani vessels, all of them fighting together like they had practiced 1,000 times. It was beautiful to see how well the two species worked together. Commander, the Corvani ships are receiving some kind of encoded message, reported Lieutenant Torres. It's not going through our shared communication system. Elena frowned. That was strange. Usually, all messages during battle went through the joint communication network so both human and Corvani commanders could hear them, but maybe it was just some technical details she didn't need to worry about. The battle was going well. The human and Corvani fleets had pushed the Zirathi back from the planet. It looked like they might actually win this fight and end the war once and for all. Elena felt hope growing in her chest as she watched enemy ships retreat. Then everything changed. It started slowly. Elena noticed that some of the Corvani ships were changing position. Instead of chasing the retreating Zirathi, they were moving to new locations around the human fleet. At first, she thought it was part of some battle plan she didn't know about. "Commander, something's wrong," Torres said. His voice was tight with fear. "The Corvani ships are targeting us." Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's impossible. Check your sensors again." But even as she said it, she could see with her own eyes that Torres was right. The sleek silver ships that had fought beside them for 3 years were turning their weapons on their human allies. All across the battle area, Corvani vessels were moving into attack positions around human ships. "All human ships? This is Admiral Chung. We are under attack by Corvani forces." "Repeat, the Corvani have turned against us." "All ships, defend yourselves." The Admiral's voice was full of shock and disbelief. Elena felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. This couldn't be happening. The Corvani were their friends, their allies, their brothers in arms, but it was happening. Corvani energy weapons began firing on human ships. The humans had lowered their shields around their allies, trusting them completely. Now that trust became a deadly weakness. Human ships exploded one after another, their crews never having a chance to defend themselves. Elena watched in horror as Admiral Chion's flagship came under attack from 3 Corvani ships at once. The Independents tried to fight back, but it was too late. The great ship that had led humanity to so many victories broke apart in a ball of fire and light. Admiral Chun, the best leader humanity had ever known, was gone. "Commander, we need to get out of here." Torres shouted over the noise of alarms and explosions. Elena's mind was frozen with shock, but her training took over. "All power to engines. Get us away from the Corvani ships. Signal the fleet to retreat." The Retribution turned and ran along with what few human ships had survived the betrayal. Behind them, Haven's Gate burned as Zirathi and Corvani ships worked together to destroy the shipyards and kill the millions of people who lived there. As they escaped into hyperspace, Elena stared at the tactical display showing what remained. Of the human fleet, 80% of their ships were gone. Most of their best officers were dead. The colonies they had sworn to protect were in enemy hands, but the worst part was not the military defeat. The worst part was the betrayal. The Corvani had been their friends. Human children learned Corvani mathematics in school. Corvani poets studied human literature. The two species had shared everything, trusted each other completely, and it had all been a lie. Elena closed her eyes and made a promise to herself and to the memory of Admiral Chun. The Corvani thought they had destroyed humanity. They thought their betrayal had been clever and successful. But they were wrong. Humanity would survive, and when they did, the Corvani would learn what it meant to betray the trust of the human race. The war was not over. It was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the day the Corvani stabbed humanity in the back. Earth looked very different now. Where once there had been peaceful cities and green parks, now there were weapons factories and military bases. Giant walls surrounded every major city. Space stations filled with guns orbited the planet like deadly moons. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. She was no longer the trusting commander who had believed in alien friendship. The betrayal at Haven's Gate had changed her, just like it had changed all of humanity. Her hair was now gray at the edges, and her eyes were cold and hard. Around her, thousands of people worked at computer screens and control panels. They were not building ships to explore the galaxy or carry families to new worlds. They were building weapons designed for one purpose: to kill every Corvani in the galaxy. "Admiral, the final test results are in," said Dr. Sarah Kim as she walked into the command center. Dr. Kim had once studied alien life forms because she thought they were interesting and beautiful. Now she designed weapons to destroy them. "The nanovirus works perfectly. It will kill every Corvani on a planet within 3 days, but it won't harm any other living thing," Elena nodded. The virus was just one part of humanity's plan for revenge. They had also built new kinds of ships, painted black as space itself. These ships were not like the old human vessels that had been built for exploration and defense. These new ships had only one job: to find Corvani worlds and destroy them. "What about the planet killer weapons?" Elena asked. "Ready for deployment," Dr. Kim replied. "We can glass an entire world from orbit in 6 hours. Or we can use the atmospheric processors to remove all the oxygen from a planet. The Corvani will have many different ways to die." Elena walked to a large window that looked out over the construction yards. In the distance, she could see the black ships being built. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like deadly predators made of metal and hate. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a city, and humanity was building hundreds of them. "How many Corvani worlds have we identified?" Elena asked. 48 in total," answered Colonel Martinez, Elena's chief intelligence officer. "We know the location of every single Corvani colony, military base, and outpost. We've been watching them for 5 years, learning their patrol routes, their defense systems, everything." Elena smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally cornered her prey. "And they still think we're too weak to fight back?" "Yes, Admiral. Their intelligence reports say that humanity is broken and defeated. They think we're hiding on Earth, too scared to leave our home system. They have no idea what we've been building." The truth was that humanity had learned important lessons from their defeat. They had been too trusting, too open with their alien allies. They had shared their technology and their battle plans because they believed in friendship and cooperation. Now they knew better. Trust was a weakness that their enemies could use against them on the other side of the galaxy. War Speaker Theshkar sat in his office on the Corvani, homeworld of Theskar Prime. He was now the supreme leader of the Corvani Empire, a position he had gained partly because of his successful betrayal of the humans. His office was filled with beautiful crystals and artwork taken from the human colonies they had destroyed. Theshkar was reading reports from the outer territories of the Corvani Empire. 3 mining colonies had stopped sending regular communications. This was not completely unusual, as mining equipment sometimes interfered with communication systems. But something about the silence bothered him. "Supreme Leader, we have a visitor," announced his aide, a younger Corvani with bright blue scales. "Intelligence Director Vishen wants to speak with you about the missing colonies." Theshkar nodded. Vishen was one of the smartest Corvani in the Empire. If he was worried about something, it was worth listening to. Vishen entered the office carrying a datapad filled with reports. His dark green scales were marked with the scars of many battles. "Supreme Leader, I believe we may have a problem. The colonies that have gone silent were all in the same region of space, and our patrol ships report seeing unknown vessels in that area." "Unknown vessels?" Theshkar asked. "Zirathi ships?" "No, sir. The ships don't match any known Zirathi design. They're small, fast, and painted black. Our sensors can barely detect them." Theshkar felt a cold fear in his stomach. He remembered the look in Admiral Chun's eyes during their last conversation before the betrayal. The human had trusted him completely, had called him brother and friend. But there had been something else in those eyes, something that had bothered Theshkar for 5 years: intelligence, cunning, the eyes of someone who understood that trust could be both a strength and a weakness. "Send investigation fleets to all 3 colonies," Theshkar ordered. "I want to know what happened to them." But it was already too late for the investigation fleets to find anything useful. On the agricultural world of Corvin 7, the investigation team found something that would haunt their dreams for the rest of their lives. The planet was still beautiful. The cities were intact. The farms were still growing food. But every single Corvani on the planet was dead. They had not died in battle. There were no signs of weapons fire or explosions. The Corvani had simply died where they stood, their bodies perfectly preserved by the cold air. In the capital city, the investigation team found Corvani families sitting around dinner tables. Children still holding toys, workers still at their desks. All dead, the investigation team leader, Captain Zeshkar, walked through the silent streets with growing horror. His people had died without even knowing they were under attack. Whatever had killed them was invisible, silent, and completely effective. As the investigation team prepared to leave the dead world, their communication systems activated. A human voice spoke in perfect Corvani language, broadcast on all frequencies. Across the planet. People of the Corvani Empire, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Fleet. 5 years ago, you betrayed our trust and murdered our friends and families. You thought you were clever. You thought you had destroyed us. You were wrong. This world is the first payment for your betrayal. 1 down. 47 to go. Captain Zeshkar and his team raced back to their ships and fled the dead world. Behind them, the human message continued to broadcast, repeating the same words over and over. 1 down. 47 to go. When the news reached Theskar Prime, it caused panic throughout the Corvani government. How had the humans found one of their colonies? How had they killed everyone without leaving any evidence of how they did it? And most importantly, how did they know the exact number of Corvani worlds? Zeshkar called an emergency meeting of the Corvani High Council. The great hall was filled with worried voices as the Empire's leaders tried to understand what had happened. This must be some kind of mistake, said Councillor Heshmark, an old Corvani with silver scales. The humans are defeated. We destroyed their fleet at Haven's Gate. They don't have the ships or the technology to attack us. But Zeshkar knew better. He had studied human history during the Alliance years. He knew that humans were dangerous when they were angry, and they never forgot an injury. The betrayal at Haven's Gate had not destroyed humanity. It had created something much worse, a human race united by hate and focused on revenge. Increase patrols around all our worlds, Zeshkar ordered. Double the defensive fleets. And send messages to all colonies warning them about possible human attacks. But even as he gave these orders, Zeshkar knew they would not be enough. The humans had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. They had studied Corvani weaknesses, planned their attacks, and built weapons specifically designed to kill his people. They were not coming to conquer or to take territory. They were coming to exterminate. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in her laboratory on Earth, watching the test results from Corvin 7 on her computer screen. The nanovirus had worked exactly as designed. Every Corvani on the planet had died within 72 hours, and the virus had then destroyed itself. Leaving no trace of how the attack had been carried out, she felt no joy in her success, only a cold satisfaction. The Corvani had taught humanity a valuable lesson about trust and betrayal. Now humanity would teach them a lesson about consequences and revenge. Elena's voice came over the laboratory. Communication system. Dr. Kim, prepare the next batch of viruses. We have 47 more worlds to visit, and I want each one to die differently. I want the Corvani to know that we have many ways to kill them. Sarah nodded and turned back to her work. She had once dreamed of using science to help different species understand each other. Now she used science to ensure that one species would never betray another again. The war for revenge had begun, and humanity intended to finish it. 2 years had passed since the first Corvani world went silent. In that time, 15 more colonies had died, each one in a different way. The Corvani Empire was falling apart from fear and panic. Their people no longer wanted to live on the outer worlds, afraid that they would be next to face the humans' terrible revenge. Captain James Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Silent Death. He was one of Elena's best students, a young officer who had learned to fight with cold efficiency instead of heroic passion. His ship was painted black like all the new human vessels, and it moved through space like a ghost hunting its prey. Morrison had been a child when the Corvani betrayed humanity at Haven's Gate. His parents had died in that battle, along with his older brother, who served on Admiral Chun's ship. Now, at 25 years old, he commanded a squadron of hunter-killer ships whose only purpose was to destroy Corvani military bases. "Captain, we found the target," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. Corvani military outpost. Delta 7, just like the intelligence report said. 40,000 Corvani soldiers and 300 ships. Morrison nodded. This base was important to the Corvani. It protected the space routes between their core worlds and their remaining outer colonies. If they destroyed it, the Corvani would lose their ability to protect their people from human attacks. "Are the defenders ready for us?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. They've got shields up and weapons charged. They know we're coming." Morrison smiled. The Corvani had learned to expect human attacks, but that wouldn't save them. Human ships were faster and carried more powerful weapons. More importantly, human crews no longer cared about their own safety. They fought with the desperate courage of people who had lost everything and wanted only revenge. "All ships, this is Morrison. Attack pattern Omega. Show them what we learned from their betrayal." The human ships moved forward like a pack of wolves. They didn't charge straight at the enemy like the old human navy used to do. Instead, they used the tactics the Corvani had taught them: deception, surprise attacks, and fighting without honor or mercy. Half of Morrison's ships pretended to retreat, making the Corvani think the humans were afraid. When the Corvani ships chased them, the other half of the human fleet appeared behind the base and began destroying it with concentrated fire. By the time the Corvani realized they had been tricked, their base was already burning. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, every Corvani ship was destroyed and the military base was a floating cloud of metal and bodies. Morrison's ships had taken almost no damage. The humans had become very good at killing Corvani on Theskar Prime, Supreme Leader. Deshkar sat in his war room staring at reports of another military disaster. Military outpost Delta 7 was gone, along with 40,000 of his best soldiers. The humans were not just attacking random colonies anymore. They were targeting important military and industrial sites, weakening the Empire's ability to defend itself. "How many worlds have we lost now?" Deshkar asked his aide. 16 colonies completely destroyed, sir. Plus 7 military bases and 3 industrial centers. And the humans are moving faster now. They're attacking multiple targets at the same time. Deshkar closed his eyes. The humans were not fighting like the species he had known during the Alliance. They were fighting like something else, something cold and mechanical that existed only to kill Corvani. He had created this monster when he betrayed them at Haven's Gate, and now it was coming to destroy his entire civilization. "What about our attempts to negotiate?" he asked. "All envoy ships have been destroyed before they could reach human space, sir. The humans don't want to talk. They want us dead." Deshkar had sent 12 different envoy ships to Earth over the past 2 years, offering everything from reparations to complete surrender. Each ship had been destroyed the moment it entered human territory. The humans sent no messages, made no demands, and gave no warnings. They simply killed every Corvani they found. In another part of the galaxy, something strange was happening with the Zirathi. The insect-like aliens who had been humanity's great enemy were now attacking Corvani worlds with renewed aggression. It was as if they knew exactly which colonies would be easy targets. Admiral Elena Vasquez sat in her command center on Earth, watching the tactical displays that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked dead Corvani worlds. Yellow dots showed worlds under attack by either human or Zirathi forces. Green dots marked the remaining Corvani colonies, growing fewer each month. "The Zirathi are performing better than we expected," reported Colonel Martinez. "They've taken 6 Corvani worlds in the past month." Elena nodded. The humans had been secretly feeding intelligence to the Zirathi, telling them which Corvani worlds had weak defenses. The insect aliens didn't know they were being used as tools of human revenge. They simply saw easy prey and attacked, just like their nature demanded. "What about our psychological warfare program?" Elena asked. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her workstation. She was no longer just designing weapons to kill Corvani Badas. Now she was designing weapons to destroy their minds and spirits. The broadcasts are working perfectly, Admiral. Every time a world dies, we transmit the final moments to all remaining Corvani colonies. Their suicide rates have increased by 400%. The humans had learned that killing Corvani Badas was not enough. They wanted to break their spirits first, to make them understand the horror of what they had done at Haven's Gate. Every Corvani in the galaxy now knew that death was coming for them, and there was nothing they could do to stop it on the Corvani. World of Veshtar, children no longer played in the streets. Their parents kept them inside, afraid that human ships might appear at any moment. The adults walked around with haunted expressions, jumping at every shadow and sound. The human psychological warfare was working. Counselor Nethkar sat in her office reading reports from across the Empire. Suicide rates were climbing. Military recruitment had stopped completely because no one wanted to fight the humans. Entire colonies were requesting evacuation, but there was nowhere safe for them to go. Counselor, we're receiving another human transmission, her aide announced. Nethkar sighed. The humans broadcast messages to the surviving Corvani worlds every few days. The messages were always the same: footage of dead colonies, lists of the people who had died, and reminders of what the Corvani had done at Haven's Gate. The transmission began with images of the agricultural world of Corvin 7, where 40 million Corvani had died from the human virus. The camera showed empty streets, silent homes, and children's toys abandoned in playgrounds. Then came Elena's voice, speaking in perfect Corvani. People of the Corvani Empire, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez. You taught us that allies are just enemies waiting for the right moment. You taught us that trust is weakness. You taught us that honor and friendship mean nothing when there is advantage to be gained. Thank you for these lessons. We have learned them well. The message continued with footage from other dead worlds. Corvani families sitting around dinner tables, killed in the middle of their meals. Corvani workers dead at their jobs. Corvani. Children who would never grow up to betray anyone. 16 worlds have paid for your betrayal, Elena's voice continued. 32 remain. We are not tired. We are not merciful. We are not interested in your surrender or your apologies. We are only interested in justice, and justice demands that every Corvani who benefited from our people's deaths must die. The transmission ended with a simple countdown, 32 worlds remaining. Nethkar turned off the communication system and sat in silence. She had been a young counselor during the Alliance years, and she had opposed the betrayal at Haven's Gate, but her opposition hadn't mattered. The war faction led by Veshkar had made the decision, and now all Corvani would pay the price. She thought about the human children she had met during the cultural exchange programs, bright, curious, young humans who had learned Corvani mathematics and poetry. They would be adults now, and they were probably serving on the black ships that hunted her people across the galaxy. In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Sarah Kim was working on her latest project. She had developed a new weapon that would remove all the oxygen from a planet's atmosphere over the course of a week. The Corvani would have time to know they were dying, but not enough time to escape. Dr. Kim, we're ready for the next phase. Elena's voice came over the communication system. Target selection for Operation Cleansing Fire, 12 worlds to be hit simultaneously. Sarah nodded and turned back to her work. She sometimes wondered what Admiral Chun would think of what humanity had become. Would he approve of their methodical extermination of an entire species? Or would he be horrified by the cold efficiency with which they carried out their revenge? But those thoughts never lasted long. Sarah would remember the footage of Haven's Gate burning, the faces of the 200 million colonists who had died because of Corvani betrayal, and her doubts would disappear. The Corvani had created this monster when they stabbed humanity in the back. Now they would face the consequences. Captain Morrison received his new orders while his ship was refueling at a secret human base built inside an asteroid. 12 targets, all to be hit at 1 year later, the Corvani Empire was dying. 32 worlds had been destroyed by human attacks, and the Zirathi had consumed 6 more. Only 10 Corvani worlds remained alive in the entire galaxy, and all of them lived in constant fear. Their once proud empire had been reduced to a handful of terrified colonies waiting for death to find them, Supreme Leader. Theshkar stood in the ruins of his war room on Theskar Prime. Half the building had been destroyed by riots when the population learned that another world had gone silent. His own people were turning against him, blaming him for the betrayal that had doomed their entire species. Supreme Leader, we have a message from the Zirathi High Command, announced his aide, one of the few Corvani still willing to serve in the government. Theshkar looked up with hope. Perhaps the insect aliens would agree to an alliance against the humans. The Zirathi had been fighting humanity for years before the betrayal. Surely they would understand that the humans were a threat to all alien life in the galaxy. The Zirathi message was short and brutal. Their hive mind spoke in mechanical tones that showed no emotion. The Corvani Empire offers alliance against human forces. The Zirathi reject this proposal. Human strategic thinking is superior to Corvani strategic thinking. Human revenge serves Zirathi expansion goals. The Corvani will be consumed when convenient. Theshkar crushed the message device in his clawed hand. Even the Zirathi, the most savage aliens in the galaxy, respected human intelligence more than they feared human revenge. The insects were content to let humanity destroy the Corvani, then pick up the pieces afterward. Sir, what are your orders? The aide asked. Theshkar looked out the window at his dying homeworld. In the distance, he could see smoke rising from burning buildings. His people were destroying their own cities in despair and rage. The humans didn't even need to attack Theskar Prime directly. They were watching the Corvani destroy themselves. Gather what remains of our fleet, Theshkar ordered. All ships from every world were going to Earth. The aide's eyes widened. Sir, that's suicide. The humans have thousands of ships defending their homeworld. Yes, it is suicide, Theshkar agreed. But if we're going to die, we'll die fighting. Maybe we can hurt them enough that they'll remember us as warriors instead of just victims. It took 3 weeks to gather the last Corvani fleet. Ships came from the remaining worlds, carrying the final hopes of a doomed species. In total, they had only 187 vessels. Most of them damaged from previous battles with human hunter-killer squadrons. The fleet that had once numbered in the thousands was now a pitiful collection of survivors. But they were all volunteers, Corvani who preferred to die in battle rather than wait for human death ships to find their worlds. Admiral Elena Vasquez received reports of the Corvani fleet movement while she was reviewing plans for the final phase of Operation Cleansing Fire. Her intelligence officers had been tracking every remaining Corvani ship, and they knew exactly where Theshkar was going. They're heading for Earth, Admiral, reported Colonel Martinez. All remaining Corvani military vessels moving in a direct line toward our home system. Elena smiled coldly. After all these years of hunting Corvani across the galaxy, they were finally coming to her. It would save humanity the trouble of chasing them down one by one. How long until they reach Earth? She asked. 6 days, Admiral. They're pushing their engines to maximum speed. Good. Send word to all fleet commanders. I want every human ship in the Sol system within 5 days. It's time to finish this war. Captain James Morrison received the recall order while his squadron was preparing to attack the mining world of Korvmasa. He felt a moment of disappointment that he wouldn't get to complete his mission, but the thought of facing Theshkar himself was more appealing than killing helpless miners. Morrison's ships joined the massive human fleet gathering around Earth. 2,000 black warships filled the space around humanity's homeworld. More firepower than had ever been assembled in one place. Every ship carried weapons designed specifically to kill Corvani, and every crew was filled with hatred for the aliens who had betrayed their trust. The battle began at the edge of the solar system. Near the orbit of Pluto, the Corvani fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately came under attack from human patrol squadrons. Theshkar had hoped to use surprise to reach Earth quickly, but the humans had been waiting for him. "All ships, this is Supreme Leader Theshkar," his voice echoed across the Corvani fleet. "Today we die with honor. Today we show the galaxy that the Corvani are warriors, not just victims. Fight well, my brothers and sisters." The Corvani ships charged forward with desperate courage. They had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Their energy weapons lit up space as they fought against impossible odds. Trying to break through the human defensive lines, Morrison's squadron met them near Jupiter's moons. The battle was savage and brief. Corvani ships exploded one after another, but they never stopped fighting. Morrison found himself admiring their courage even as he destroyed them. These aliens were finally showing the warrior spirit they should have displayed at Haven's Gate instead of betraying their allies. "Captain, we're detecting one ship breaking through our lines," reported Lieutenant Hayes. "It's this car's flagship. He's heading for the Luna shipyards," Morrison grinned. The Luna shipyards were where humanity had built their revenge fleet. If this car wanted to make his last stand there, Morrison would be happy to accommodate him. The final battle took place among the construction scaffolds and factory platforms that orbited Earth's moon. The Shkara's ship, damaged and bleeding atmosphere, fought like a cornered predator against Morrison's squadron. The Corvani leader was a skilled warrior, and his ship was one of the most advanced in their fleet, but skill and technology weren't enough to overcome human hatred in superior numbers. Morrison's ships surrounded the Shkara's flagship and systematically destroyed its weapons and engines. When the Corvani ship could no longer fight, Morrison gave an unusual order. "Boarding. Parties prepare for capture mission." "I want the Shkar alive." Lieutenant Hayes looked confused. "Sir, our orders are to kill all Corvani forces." "Why are we taking prisoners?" Morrison's smile was cold and cruel. "Because killing him quickly would be mercy. And we're not in the business of mercy anymore." The boarding action was swift and professional. Human Marines in black armor stormed through the Corvani ship, killing anyone who resisted but leaving the Shkar alive as ordered. They found him on his bridge, wounded but defiant, still trying to fight with a damaged energy weapon. When they brought the Shkar aboard Morrison's ship, the Corvani leader expected to be executed immediately. Instead, Morrison had him taken to the observation deck, where he could watch the final destruction of his fleet through a large window. "Why am I still alive?" Veshkar asked in broken human language. Morrison stood beside him, watching Corvani. "Ships explode in the distance, because killing you would end your suffering. But I want you to see what your betrayal has cost your people. I want you to watch your entire species die, knowing that you caused it." The Shkar's yellow eyes filled with pain, but not from his physical wounds. "You have become monsters." "Yes," Morrison agreed. "You taught us how. At Haven's Gate, you showed us that honor and friendship are weaknesses that enemies can exploit. You showed us that the only way to survive is to be more ruthless than anyone else. Congratulations, Veshkar. You created us." Through the window, they watched the last Corvani ships die in balls of fire and light. The final fleet of a once proud empire was reduced to floating wreckage in less than 4 hours. Human ships moved through the debris field, making sure no Corvani had survived. "How many of my people are left?" Vishkar asked quietly. Morrison consulted a datapad. "According to our intelligence, there are approximately 12 million Corvani remaining on 10 worlds. Your homeworld of Theskar Prime has the largest population, about 4 million, and you intend to kill them all?" "Every single one," Morrison confirmed. "Men, women, children, elderly, sick, healthy. Everyone who carries Corvani DNA will die. That's the price of betrayal." Vishkar closed his eyes. He had known this moment would come ever since the betrayal at Haven's Gate. He had seen the look in Admiral Chun's eyes during their final conversation, the intelligence and determination that marked humans as a dangerous species. But he had thought that intelligence could be used against them, that their trust could be turned into a weapon. Now he understood his mistake. Human intelligence wasn't just about tactics and strategy. It was about remembering every injury, learning from Every betrayal, and never making the same mistake twice. The Corvani had taught humanity not to trust aliens, and humanity had learned that lesson perfectly. "There's something you should know," Leshkar said slowly. "During the Alliance years, before the betrayal, I genuinely respected your people. Admiral Chen was a good leader and an honorable warrior. If circumstances had been different— But circumstances weren't different," Morrison interrupted. "You made your choice at Haven's Gate. You chose betrayal over honor, advantage over friendship. Now live with the consequences." Morrison left Leshkar alone on the observation deck, watching the wreckage of his fleet drift through space. Outside, human ships were— The human fleet arrived at Theskar Prime like a storm made of metal and death. 2,000 black ships surrounded the Corvani homeworld in a perfect sphere, cutting off all escape routes. Every weapon was pointed at the planet below, ready to finish what had started 7 years ago at Haven's Gate. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the blue and green world that had once been the heart of a galactic empire. Now it was the last refuge of a dying species, home to 4 million Corvani who had nowhere left to run. "Admiral, all ships report ready for final bombardment," announced Colonel Martinez. "We can begin planetary sterilization on your command." Elena nodded, but she didn't give the order immediately. For the first time in 7 years, she wanted the Corvani to know exactly why they were about to die. Open a channel to the planet. Broadcast on all frequencies. Her face appeared on every communication screen across Theskar Prime, in the capital city. Corvani families gathered around their televisions to hear what the human admiral had to say. They knew death was coming, but they wanted to understand. "Why? People of Theskar Prime, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the human fleet," she began. Her voice was calm and cold, like someone reading a shopping list. 7 years ago, your leaders betrayed the alliance between our species. At the battle of Haven's Gate, Corvani ships turned their weapons on human vessels who trusted them as brothers and sisters. On the planet below, millions of Corvani listened in silence. Many of them had been children during the betrayal, too young to understand what their government had done. Others had opposed the war but had been powerless to stop it. 200 million humans died because of that betrayal, Elena continued. Admiral Marcus Chun, the finest leader our species ever produced, died because he trusted your people. Entire families were wiped out. Children lost their parents. Parents lost their children. All because your leaders decided that alliance meant nothing when there was advantage to be gained. Dr. Sarah Kim stood beside Elena, watching the readings from the planet's surface. Her instruments detected something unexpected. Corvani children in the capital city were singing. She enhanced the audio pickup and listened carefully. The children were singing human lullabies, songs they had learned during the cultural exchange programs years ago. "Admiral," Dr. Kim said quietly, "you need to hear this." Elena listened to the audio feed. The voices of young Corvani filled the communication channel, singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in perfect English. These children had learned human songs when they were very young, during the time when the two species were friends. For a moment, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 7 years: doubt. These children had nothing to do with the betrayal at Haven's Gate. They had been babies when Theskar made his terrible decision. Was it right to kill them for something they hadn't done? But then she remembered the children of Haven's Gate, human boys and girls who had been singing their own songs when Corvani weapons ended their lives. She remembered the promise she had made to Admiral Chun's memory, and to all the humans who had died trusting their alien allies. The betrayal at Haven's Gate was not a military decision, Elena continued her broadcast. It was a choice to value Corvani lives above human lives. It was a decision that friendship and trust were weaknesses to be exploited. Your people chose to teach us that lesson, and we learned it well. On the planet's surface, panic was spreading through the cities. But strangely, some of the younger Corvani were not running or hiding. Instead, they were gathering in public squares, broadcasting messages of their own. "Humans of the fleet," came a young Corvani voice over the communication system. This is Netsara, daughter of Counselor Nethkar. I was 5 years old when your people were betrayed. I learned human mathematics in school. I read human poetry. I know what my elders did was wrong. We are sorry for what happened to your friends and families. More young voices joined her. Corvani, who had grown up during the Alliance years, who remembered human teachers and human friends. They spoke of their shame at what their government had done, their sorrow for the humans who had died, and their acceptance of the punishment that was coming. Elena listened to these voices and felt her resolve waver. These young Corvani sounded genuinely sorry for the betrayal. They understood why humanity was angry. They accepted that justice demanded payment for what had been done, but justice and revenge were not the same thing. And Elena had spent 7 years focused on revenge. Captain Morrison brought Theshkar to the bridge to watch the final moments of his homeworld. The former Corvani leader looked older and more tired than Elena had ever seen him. His yellow eyes were filled with pain as he listened to his people's final messages. They were children, Theshkar said quietly. Most of them had nothing to do with the betrayal. They learned to love humans during the Alliance years. Is there no mercy in you? Elena turned to face him. Where was your mercy at Haven's Gate? Did you think about human children when you ordered your ships to fire on our fleet? Did you consider that human families would be destroyed by your betrayal? No, Theshkar admitted. I thought only of Corvani's survival. I made a terrible mistake, and my people have paid for it with their blood. But these children are innocent. Elena stared at the tactical display showing her fleet surrounding the planet. With one word from her, every Corvani below would die within hours. It would be the complete extinction of an entire species, the final revenge for Haven's Gate. But as she listened to the young Corvani voices apologizing for something they hadn't done, Elena began to understand something important. Revenge was not about justice. Revenge was about making the pain stop by causing pain to others. And 7 years of causing pain to the Corvani hadn't made her feel any better about losing Admiral Chun and the others. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Admiral, I'm detecting something else. The adult Corvani leadership is gathering in the government district. They're not hiding. They're waiting for us. Elena activated the scanners and saw that Dr. Kim was right. In the capital city's government buildings, several thousand adult Corvani were standing in formation. These were the ones who had been in power during the betrayal, the ones who had made the decision to stab humanity in the back. Open a channel to the government district, Elena ordered. The face of an elderly Corvani appeared on her screen. Elena recognized him as Counselor Vishan, who had been one of Theshkar's closest advisors during the war. Admiral Vasquez? The old Corvani said, We know why you have come. We accept responsibility for the betrayal at Haven's Gate. We are ready to face justice for our crimes. But we ask that you spare the young ones. They are innocent of our sins. Elena looked around her bridge at the human officers who had followed her for 7 years. She saw Captain Morrison, whose parents had died at Haven's Gate. She saw Dr. Kim, who had spent years designing weapons to kill Corvani. She saw Colonel Martinez, who had lost his brother in the betrayal. All of them were waiting for her decision. All of them had trusted her to lead humanity's revenge against the species that had betrayed them. All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez, Elena said into her communication system. Target the government district only. Precision strikes on military and political leadership. Civilian areas are off limits. Captain Morrison looked shocked. Admiral, our mission is complete extinction. We can't leave any Corvani alive. They might rebuild their empire and threaten us again. Elena turned to face her protege. James, 7 years ago the Corvani taught us that trust is weakness. But if we kill innocent children for the crimes of their elders, what does that teach? The galaxy about humanity? What does it teach us about ourselves? She looked at Theshkar, who was staring at her with something like hope in his yellow eyes. The Corvani leadership betrayed our trust and murdered our friends. They deserve to die for that crime. But their children don't deserve to carry that burden forever. The precision strikes began an hour later. Human ships fired carefully targeted weapons at government buildings. military bases, and the homes of senior officials who had supported the betrayal. Within 6 hours, every Corvani who had been in a position of authority during the war was dead, but the children lived. The young adults who had learned human languages and human songs survived. The teenagers who had grown up ashamed of what their elders had done were spared. Elena ordered the survivors to be relocated to a small world on the edge of human space, where they could rebuild their civilization under careful supervision. They would live with the knowledge of what their species had done, and they would teach their own children about the consequences of betrayal. The Shkar was executed along with the other war leaders, but before he died, he thanked Elena for showing mercy to the innocent. "You have proven that humans are better than we were," he said. "Perhaps the galaxy will learn that lesson." As the human fleet prepared to leave Theskar Prime, Elena stood on her bridge one last time, watching the planet that had once been the heart of an enemy empire. The Corvani civilization was broken, their military destroyed, their leadership dead. They would never again pose a threat to humanity, but some of them would live, and maybe that was more important than perfect revenge.